Okay, let's go. Last time I mentioned that I wouldn't play any gambits as white anymore because, I mean, the game in particular went pretty terribly. I did win it, but yeah, I shouldn't have. It should have probably been a draw pretty easily for my opponents, but the end game was just. I mean, it was a fun end game, but yeah, should have been a draw. So instead, I should play gambits as black. So I played as black. I didn't play gambits though. It was a what's it called? Smyslov. My opponent mentioned. I don't actually know the name. Wouldn't have known the name otherwise. My opponent. Oh yeah, let's actually give a bit of context here. My opponent, or I played this in an external competition, and this is the competition that we have 0 points in, and we were playing against the group leader at the moment. And well, I mean, this didn't happen, but let's just say that we scored 3.5 each, and then this is the game that, well, this is going to be the deciding game. It's not how this happened, because I was done earlier than some other players, but other than my game, we had 3.5 points, which is our highest score, and I mean, our opponents had a 4 as their lowest score, of 4-4, but as their highest score there was a 5.5, 2.5. So anything was possible, and it was already an upset quite early. It could have easily, been an upset without us even winning. But let's see. D4. Knight of 6. Let's actually close this. I looked at some openings. Part of me really wanted to play what's it called? Let's see what this is called. This B5, which is Benko Gambit, of course. Yeah. And then you take, and A6 take, and like this is gonna be really difficult, even if you defend it, because I take the bishop and then, I mean, play continues, but this was what I was hoping to play. Otherwise I just play a Benoni. But my opponent didn't even play c4, and after knight f3 I don't really like playing c5 generally. But it's okay. I think c5 is fine, but I didn't do that. I just turned it into some sort of modern, like a King's Indian, stuff like that. Yeah, I just played a normal fianchetto, and actually I played d6 first before castling. This is just very standard. Bishop g5, and yeah, that puts some pressure on this knight. You kind of sometimes want to take, but also, like, if I ever play e5, which is the normal move after castling, and my opponent plays e3, if I ever want to play e5, then this becomes an actual pin, so e5 knight e4 might even be a move. Yeah, so I did not really like that idea. Also e5 you can just take and win a pawn, so I do have to defend it. Knight b to d7 is a very flexible move for that. I can play e5, I can play c5, I also just defend the knight. So yeah, this all makes sense. My opponent develops, and now I have to decide e5 or c5 basically. And well, if you know me to enough of an extent, you know that I play Benonis, and I wanted to play Benko Gambit, so I play c5, of course. It turns out that on the next board over, my teammate plays as white and got to this position as well, and then the black player played e5. I didn't know that until they mentioned it, but yeah, this happened on two boards, which is interesting. Yeah, d5 is the normal move. You don't want to let me take, because then you lose a bit of center control. You don't want to take, because I take with the knight and you lose a bit of center control. But this opens up my bishop quite well. It also like puts some pressure on the center. So I tried to use this diagonal, and I wanted to move my knight. So I played a really terrible move. I played knight to e8. That's terrible. What I should do is probably just h6, g5 and knight h5. That's what I probably should do. And then like after that I can plant a knight on e5, take the bishop, plant a knight on e5, and play goes on. But I remembered in the Benoni, I've never even played this line, but I remember some prep that you play instead of rook e8, which is the standard move with this pawn gone and this pawn gone, because it's a semi-open file and you attack e5. Instead of that you play knight e8, and well, we'll see what happens here. This is the main threat right now, and my opponent defends, and you plant a knight on e5. And the point is that eventually they'll take twice. You have to take with the... Wow, my arrows are going insane. You take with the pawn in the end, and then you play... Jeez. Knight d6, and plant your knight on d6. And like center control. And that's kind of the point of this setup. But this is just terrible for multiple reasons. Actually, this is probably not terrible. This is probably mediocre at best. But what's going to happen is absolutely terrible. My opponent plays a waiting move, h3, which is a good move. I play h6. I play the plan that I did want to do. I looked at bishop f5 here, but then you just play e4 and there's nothing. Maybe I just have to go back even. So I just play g5, bishop g3, and like this is kind of what I wanted. Well, I want my opponent to take twice here and justify my knight move. There is also in this position you can take, and if I take with the bishop I lose a pawn, but like this is also fine. This is kind of what I wanted as well. And then you have to move here, and like I play knight d6 immediately, probably pretty decent. There was also here you could just take bishop h6, and then I'd play knight g7 was kind of the second point. So I don't have to trade on g7 with my bishop, and I can, well, force them to have a doubled pawn at some point, or just let this be. But yeah, this happened, bishop g3, and I played now I played probably the worst move I've played in I'll play in this entire game, which is the move e6, and e6 just does not make sense whatsoever. e6 is a really bad move, because where I should just leave the center closed probably, and maybe even maybe play e5 immediately if the knight moves, or I should play f5 and but I should kind of also not even be doing this, attacking on the king side. I should definitely not attack in the center, and it's really difficult to attack on the queen side. b5 is like b5 is defended thrice, and it's kind of easy to defend it even more. Which is partially what the point of e6 is, but I mean it's just really bad because like you can abuse this so much. My opponent fortunately doesn't actually do this. I think the move h4 here is winning, and we looked at it, and my opponent after the game agrees that h4 is winning here. We'll see with the engine if h4 is winning later. Fortunately, that didn't happen, and after taking once, and I take with the bishop because that's what I want to do. If the bishop is here and there's a pawn here, e4, my bishop is dead, so I want to trade it off actually. Now you can't really go h4 anymore, because I can just let my opponent take, and I take back with the queen, and I believe the line would be knight g7, so that in this variation I don't lose. I can just go here. So that's, yeah, I think h4 is worse here than in the previous move. Fortunately my opponent didn't play it again, just takes again. And this is kind of the setup that I wanted with my knight on d6. And then my opponent castled, and I realized I couldn't play knight d6. I realized something terrible about the move, about the square d6. Again, like last week, because if knight d6 they take, and I would lose a pawn, because this is a threat, and like especially knight e4, and I can't stop that. I can't defend this a second time, so I can't take back, and I lose a pawn. Did I say they castled? No, they didn't. They played rook d1, and so I played knight d6, because in this variation I can take back, and after knight e4 I have queen f5 check. Just barely everything works, and in this case, after, let's say, what would be the move? Let's say this, and trade. I'm okay here. I'm pretty decent here. And actually rook d2 is terrible. Probably just knight back? No, then that loses the c-pawn, knight here. And like f5. I'm pretty happy here in this position. Seems decent. So now the knight d6 is possible. My opponent doesn't take. My opponent also mentioned that they should have played knight e4 here, which they didn't do. But and I think we calculated this, and the game definitely goes on, but I believe I lose a pawn, because this hangs, and that's kind of an issue, and this is also maybe sometimes an issue. And like, yeah, so, and also queen no, not queen e4, that was a move here. I saw queen e4, which was very scary, and then bishop d3, but everything barely holds, I think, and like taking, and it's all, this position is just terrible for me. But yeah, my opponent kind of gave me some time to breathe, and then suddenly I think if I get f5 my position looks kind of reasonable. And the reason my opponent played rook d1 here is because after knight d6 they wanted to castle short to prepare f4, which kind of makes sense. The thing is, though, I played queen e7 because this is actually a threat now. Taking is a threat. The issue is with f4 that it's probably a really bad move. Actually, it's probably okay, but you do need to play it accurately. So they took, and I took back again, which looks terrible for me, but I think everything holds, and my opponent should probably take here now, take on e6. And after I take back, only then play rook takes f4. But my opponent plays rook takes f4 immediately, and then I have e5. And you don't have rook g4 because I just take. And what I saw is this is blocked, this is blocked, this is blocked, this is blocked, and this is blocked as well. Also, this is blocked and that's blocked, of course. So the rook has to move on the f-file and backwards. And like rook f2 and rook f1 are bad, or I mean rook f1 is just you can't even double. Rook f2 doesn't do anything other than doubling, so my opponent played rook f3, which makes sense. And now, yeah, we're at move 20. And at move 20, my opponent had I had about an hour left, and my opponent had about 20 minutes. And yeah, that's going to be an issue later on, because we don't actually get extra time here in this competition. So yeah, if I just make the position very difficult, my opponent might actually flag here. So the moments that my opponent lost time were like my opponent really calculated long castle, which I think is definitely winning, or at least better, and at multiple moments, but didn't really see anything concrete. We'll see if that's actually true or not. My opponent looked at f4 a lot, and yeah, so my opponent just spent a lot of time, and I'm going to just make the game as complicated as possible, force my opponent to spend a lot of time and probably make errors in calculation. That's my goal. So I played f5 here, which was the point. Oh, sorry. f5. The point, well, kind of the point of this position. This pawn is defended thrice, and easily defended the fourth time. It's only attacked twice, and it's kind of difficult to attack it more. It is pinned now though, because if I move it ever, you get queen g6, which is really devastating. But it's kind of difficult to attack, because even bishop d6 I just win. Rook f1 is possible, but that doesn't help. Because it's still 3 versus 3, so it doesn't do enough. g4, I can also defend extra and block g4 from doing anything. Also after queen g5, which was, if I got like 3 moves for free, I played queen g5 and f4 and stuff, and because this is now defended as well, so there's no queen g6, because queen takes g6. So I think this was definitely a move I wanted to play. Right now, though, it is possible if my opponent doesn't play rook g3. So my opponent plays rook g3. And I go to h7. The pawn was already pinned regardless, so it doesn't matter. And now I prevent rook g6. My opponent here spent also, again, a couple of minutes trying to make bishop h5 work to infiltrate. The issue though that we looked at was bishop h5, queen h4, double attack, bishop g6, you have to really go to h8, and then the rook can survive, but like, what are you doing? And you can also, I looked at this, but then you don't have f5, f4 I don't think. Maybe you do. Maybe that's fine. Yeah, so my opponents really tried to make this work, and it just unfortunately doesn't, because my queen is actually well placed and I've got some space to work with. So bishop h5 doesn't work. So my opponent instead played knight b5, which is also a decent move, decent idea, to just trade off my knight, because my knight is actually, well, that was the point of this entire plan that I had. This knight on d6 is actually very good. It defends the center and attacks the center. I can use it to make a central push, and this pawn is also, this pawn can just run. c4 will always be an issue. The knight blocks this pawn on d5, so the d pawn is no longer a threat. This knight is just great. So my opponent tries to trade it off, and there's really no way to prevent that. I looked at just taking and taking back and queen d6, which is probably fine. But it's a lot less concrete than just developing this bishop, which I did. There was also knight e5, but I think that, or knight e4, but I think that's actually, I think that's not great in this position because of d6, and you have to go to f7. I looked at a lot of other moves fail because these two fail because of knight c7. This one is probably decent. I think this would have been the second option. This fails because of d7. Same with this d7, right? Maybe not. Maybe it's taking. Actually, these are probably also fine. But these two definitely aren't. Actually, they also are. But this. Maybe everything is fine, but let's say this, and knight c7, rook b8. Actually, you can also just take, so you probably first have to do something like this. Block the pawn, attack the rook with the knight, and then we just play this position, which is, this pawn is getting kind of scary, and my knight actually isn't doing all that well, all that much. So I'd rather just let my opponent take. I played bishop d7 here. One thing you can do is play knight c7. I'd play rook d8, knight e6, and I'd take. I'd be happy with that. I'd also be happy with taking here with the bishop. I'd be happy trading this bishop for this knight. But this bishop is also good. My opponent traded the knight though, and now tried bishop h5. And now, because I also developed my bishop, I saw this in advance, I can play bishop e8 to defend here on g6. And there really isn't all that much you can do. There is a nice threat though, which is interesting. I'm attacking the bishop, of course. It looks like you might be able to go here because of this pin, but bishop g4, e4 unpins and attacks the rook, winning a piece. Also bishop, for same reason, bishop f3, e4. You don't want to do either, though. Queen e2 might be the best move, or we actually looked at taking, which looks terrible, but is actually better than it seems, I think. But my opponent, so queen e2 is also probably decent. But my opponent in time trouble just basically went back, didn't really see the plan, and wasted two moves here, which I can also abuse because my bishop is now good again, and I try to find multiple ways to play this. I looked at e4 attacking the rook and then f4, but then the pawn hangs. e4, e3, but then what am I doing with e3, and it's also hanging, and e4 seems like a decent move, but after like rook e3 I didn't really see it. Maybe then bishop g6, but I just played bishop g6 immediately, creating a threat here of f4, which you of course have to defend against. So my opponent played this, and my opponent basically tried to make legal moves in order to not flag here. My opponent had like 5 minutes left, and I believe I was under an hour. I believe it was like at like 50 minutes left or so. Yeah, time management. Very important. Last opponent in an external competition I also flagged. So, yeah, it's really important, even in classical, to manage your time well. Yeah, rook b3. So I can just start marching, or I can try to defend, and of course I need to defend once at least. So I played b6. I can also play rook f7, but I was not in a hurry to do something like that. My opponent just played a move, e4, move, f4. My opponent didn't really try to stop me, but it's really difficult to even try. Take. I considered not taking back, but I was like, whatever. Legal move. And I mean, the only reason I showed you the end is because actually it's pretty beautiful what happened here. I played the move f3 first, threatening the bishop, of course. Winning a piece is probably enough. It also like creates this threat maybe. If you take, I probably play queen g3 first and then take back. Also maybe take, attacking the queen moves, or bishop d3 is probably the only move there, so take, bishop d3, queen or no, then the plan was f2 check, and queen h2 was the point, I believe. And then I sack a piece, like check here. There's no more checks, I don't think. Actually, maybe that's terrible. I believe there queen c2 works. So maybe I should go here. Then this check. And then go there. Yeah, that's it. And then my opponent can sack the piece back, but then there's no more checks. And I think this is just checkmate. Or at least I queen. I'm not sure you noticed, you can see all of this with the arrows, so let's look at it a bit. G takes here, f2 check. Oh, maybe I was looking at king f1, but maybe you don't even have to do that. Maybe you have other moves. But let's say king f1, and my plan was this. Actually, probably I don't even have to sack the piece. I can just go here. That's probably game over. Queen h1 is, or queen g1 is unstoppable, and this is also probably deadly. Also, this might hang. So yeah, yeah. The plan was, so the move is f3. My opponent tries to defend, and then e3. Attacking the queen. Finally a discovered attack. There was a pawn always in one of these two squares until now. So now the queen, now actually the bishop blocks, and now e2 is winning. Finally, and this is actually winning because I just take back here, and then there's 3 threats, and you can this is a free solution, but like also this is when this is a threat, and I make 2 queens here. Also rook a1. Yeah, yeah. The pawns just run, and it's really difficult to stop. And my pieces were good, so I won, and our team won this match. So we might not get last somehow. Actually, I looked at it, we were, if everything goes like, if there are no more major upsets, then we don't get last. We actually don't, somehow. But yeah, so let's see how this game went. I know how it went. It went pretty bad. This is terrible. This is fine, but yeah. A bishop f4, interesting. F5. Would not have played that. Yeah, this is all okay. This is fine. Knight e8 was bad, makes sense. e4, yeah. Knight e5 first is fine. Taking, okay. f5 makes sense actually. But you can't allow them to take, and especially not play e6. e6 is terrible after h4, yeah. Taking is apparently equal to h4. But now you can't play h4 anymore. I thought. I guess you can. But you just... okay. Whatever. Yeah, second option is castle long. Third option is rook d1. It's all better, of course. I saw that. But knight d6 is now possible, which is not after castling long. But you still have to play h4. Or castle, apparently. Queen e7. You have to do something. f4 is playable? I thought I was ahead after f4. Oh, sorry, I'm ahead after taking here. Because you have to take on e6 in between, and then it's suddenly fine for white. I guess this is just equal. e4. Oh yeah, I looked at e4, but then you just go back to f4, I thought. But maybe that's good. Check. King h7. Makes sense. Knight b5. Makes sense to me at least. Bishop d7 is the best move. Yeah, you can't play knight e4, right? This must be bad, right? It's okay. It's not great. Yeah, bishop d7. You just take, of course. Bishop h5. Yeah, you can take. Told you. Taking is just minus 0.1. So, I guess that's playable. Your other options are a bishop or a queen e2, which I also saw and thought was okay. But you get like e4 and then rook e3, and it's kind of playable. Like bishop e2 is just worse for white, of course, and everything else is terrible. Yeah, bishop g6, rook b3, b6. Yeah, g3. It looks terrible, but you do have to defend against f4 probably at some point. But I just run, and it's really difficult to stop. And yeah, you can't play f3. I was kind of afraid of b7, but f3 is fine, probably. Now f3, yeah, you have to play f3 and not e3, because otherwise you can't play f3 anymore, and the e-pawn is just stopped. And like, I mean, it doesn't even matter what my opponent did. Yeah, e2 now. This is just very winning. Yeah, and this is also the position where my opponent resigned. Okay, so now the game is over, and we won't get last, probably. We need to win though. But we're playing against the team that is currently in second to last position. We just need to win, and we're pretty much good. So wish me luck. See you later. I'm not sure when exactly. I believe early April, maybe earlier. We'll see. I've got a lot of time right now, so maybe I'll do some internal competition stuff as well. We'll see. See you whenever.